Obviously, the questions arise. Is Trump just sloppy with classified information? Is Trump a national security risk? Or is it possible he's neither or both? And fast forward to this summer in Mar-a-Lago. Big question is, should he be indicted over this? I'm joined by three expert analysts in their respective fields. Chris Swecker is the former assistant director of the FBI Criminal Investigations Unit. David Schoen is an attorney specializing in federal criminal defense cases, and he also was one of Donald Trump's lawyers during his second impeachment trial. And Philip Bump is a national correspondent for the Washington Post. Okay, well, welcome to all three of you. I'm glad to have you all here. David, I'm going to start with you just on the legal side of this and the news that happened today that Donald Trump has secured this new attorney. And he's, a big deal, former solicitor of Florida. Chris Swecker. I can't say that I'd heard of him. That's not saying much. But I'm wondering if you know much about him and what you know about him. And maybe even more importantly, have you had a chance to meet with him?
I have not had a chance to meet with him. I do a lot of work in Florida, and I actually didn't know him. But from his credentials, we have every reason to believe he's a good, solid lawyer. Mark Caputo broke this piece today and reported, I think, pretty thoroughly on it. Looks like a pretty serious matter if he's leaving his law firm over it. The piece implied that the law firm was sort of pushing him out because he's representing Trump. I hope that's not the case. I hope sort of cancel culture hasn't gone that far. The law firm represented, and Kais himself apparently represented Venezuela, corrupt Venezuelan government. So it seems to me if they're okay, Trump ought to be okay with the firm. But anyway, I always think the best of a lawyer until and unless I see otherwise.
Well, and I get mad when I see people, taking potshots at lawyers. Everyone in this country gets a lawyer. It's what makes us amazing. O.J. Simpson had a lawyer, and the lawyers in his criminal case and the civil case came out just fine. Everyone deserves a defense. And so to besmirch lawyers who take cases that some people find unpalatable is unacceptable. So there, I'm off my soapbox for a minute. I just want to add one question, David, and I know you probably appreciate what I just said. And that is that the 60 posts today, at a time when a lot of people in his inner circle, and you've been in there, you've been in that circle, have said, stop. You just got to stop and you've got to fight this in the court system because that's where this has to be. As a lawyer, knowing that, Mr. Kais is coming on board, what would your advice for former President Trump be about all these truth socials that are coming out?
I'll tell you a couple of things. First of all, I appreciate you've done a very thorough job here in presenting this. I would say from my experience, though, all of this talk about Trump being a difficult client and not listening was not my experience. He was one of the most gracious clients I've ever dealt with, and he listened to everything that I said. I certainly would advise him, not to back off of this stuff, but I think he feels under siege politically. He feels that this is a political weaponization of the criminal justice system. So right or wrong, that's certainly what he believes in his heart. And, we can't look at it in a vacuum. There is some basis for saying that.
Well, Chris Swecker's here, so that's a great question. Chris, your bona fides are phenomenal. You're the former assistant director of the FBI Criminal Investigations Unit. Is there some basis for Donald Trump saying that the DOJ and the FBI have been weaponized against him?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think so. I talked to my colleagues. I talked to people in the Bureau. I have a pretty wide circle. And I've said over and over again over the last couple weeks that the FBI is hemorrhaging goodwill. Day after day, things come up that show that the FBI, at least some of the leadership at the FBI, are allowing politics to seep into their cases and into their case initiations and their use of certain techniques and that sort of thing. So, it pains me to say that. It pains me to admit that because I love the organization. I love the people in it. I served for 24 years, immensely proud of that. But it's universal, at least in the people that I talk to. And I look for dissenting opinions on this. It's universal that the FBI has allowed itself to be used as a political tool. And I hope, this at some point that changes. We had hoped that Chris Wray would do that. Apparently not.
Well, Chris Wray was a Trump appointee. And so some of those who say that this is not a politicized process will say, how could it be when the guy at the top is one of Trump's guys? But Phil at Bump, I think it's a great question. You know, Chris has worked inside the FBI. He knows, knows it like the back of his hand. And there's David saying that he was a great client. Now, I do know other lawyers personally who said it was a miserable experience and they quit, and then many who haven't gotten paid. So I know firsthand about that. But it is a fascinating study in how there's just such a division of belief and a division of opinion, and how it bleeds its way even into the law and the courts. And as a reporter, I'm sure that this is a struggle that you face every day. How do I report the facts without creating the blowback, whether it's right or wrong?
Well, I think the best advice is to look at the facts, right? And so obviously we have this narrative that Donald Trump is eager to promote that focuses on why the FBI is doing this. But at the same time, we also have this abundance of evidence that shows that Donald Trump had material marked as classified at Mar-a-Lago and that he had been asked to return it and had not returned it, right? So we have some pretty elementary facts which suggest that the FBI's explanation for why they were at Mar-a-Lago and for the broader investigation, which was triggered by the National Archives, that there's merit to that having been initiated. Now, there are all sorts of questions that we could get into, and that we could debate over the answers. But that much is pretty straightforward. And I think it's also important to recognize that Donald Trump is amplifying this idea that the FBI is acting with bias because it serves him well politically. He is actively, and has since even before he took office, he has actively worked to ensure that his base is skeptical of federal law enforcement, justifiably and not justifiably. There are certainly examples in which Donald Trump has misrepresented what federal law enforcement has done because he thinks it serves him in situations like this, in situations like a prospective investigation into him. He now has a base of people who are very, very skeptical of what the FBI is doing, far beyond the measured comments that we just heard. They think the FBI is completely out of control and completely wild, and Donald Trump is stoking that. He is actively fostering that idea, even though when you get back to the facts, of the basic facts of the case, it's obvious that Donald Trump was doing something that in other circumstances would very much have warranted a federal investigation.
And in a little bit, we're going to go into some of the comments that Donald Trump made today regarding the FBI. And some say it's inciting, uprising within the FBI and the agents themselves. And I'll get into that in a moment. But David Schoen, the idea that documents about French President Emmanuel Macron would have been among some of the material seized at Mar-a-Lago, and that partnered with the reporting that Trump has been bragging about dirt that he's got on Macron that he got from his intelligence sources. That's all very troubling. I don't care what Macron is doing, in all of his bedrooms. What I do care about is that foreign partners and allies may look at us and say, you aren't safe. You're not the kind of people we can do business with because our assets could be in danger from your sloppiness, your carelessness, your boasting. And I wonder, just legally speaking, if there's any reason that a former president should have any kind of documentation about the private life of another president in another country after he's left office and in a resort, hotel that could so easily be breached.
Yeah, I can't answer whether there's any reason. I don't know what the document is exactly. I will say this, as you know, Donald Trump has a different personality than anyone we've ever seen in office before. But I'd like to go back to just 2 points. First of all, the idea Chris Swecker has said what he said should really resonate with folks. This is a guy who knows what he's talking about. I have to say, I love the institution too. My father was an FBI agent. He was my hero. But as for the idea that the FBI was right in doing what they did, maybe, but there were alternatives. And so if they were concerned about these documents, some of the alternatives would have been a joint review of the documents, which is especially appropriate when there are potentially privileged documents there, or relocating them off-site if they didn't trust it to be a secure facility, and still doing a joint joint review of the documents. You see, this is the problem that the Fourth Circuit, for example, has criticized, even putting in place a taint or filter team. That is a group of people divorced from the aligned prosecutors, but associated with the Department of Justice to review them. The problem with that is they're still ultimately members of the team. And by the way, we don't know that every agent who had contact with these documents had the proper security clearance either. But that's why, the special master that's been requested is important. I'm afraid it's a little too late, especially after the disclosure that the DOJ has already reviewed the documents. That removes, in a sense, the major concern one has when calling for a special master. So I don't know that I've really answered your question directly, because I can't comment on the Macron documents without really knowing what's there. I hear you on the face of it. And again, you are presenting a really detailed, thorough, very balanced picture here.
Well, and listen, there's so much more I could get into. Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.